Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Mugwump Tower, this is Albatross 1-3, requesting permission to land. Over.
I don't need a computer to tell me how to land a damn airplane.
6.
Heads-up display, check.
5,
Lasers, check.
4,
Particle beam, check.
3,
Photon bolts, check.
2,
Chair control, check.
1.
Let's do it.
Broadcasting from a secret underground location somewhere in Mos Eisley. This is the Docking Bay 77 podcast. Make yourself comfortable. The show is about to start.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Docking Bay 77 podcast. I'll be your host today. I'm Robert, and we will have some fun guests on talking about Kate Bush's album, Hounds of Love.
It's in the trees. It's coming.
When I was a child, running in the light, afraid of what might be, hiding in the dark, hiding in the street, and the world was full of enemy. The hounds of love are haunting. I've always been the coward.
Today, we have got with us Liam Lewis, who you all know from the podcast.
Hey,
Liam.
thanks for having me, Robert. I appreciate it.
But of course, and we have kind of an extension to our podcast, Ohana, a longtime Kate Bush fan, and also has a connection, of course, to the Disney stores, all the way from the UK, appropriately enough for Kate Bush. We have got Bradley Brady.
Hi, Robert. Thanks for having me. It's a real thrill.
Absolutely. We are charmed and delighted to have you join us today. So our topic, we're going to be talking about Kate Bush's album, Hounds of Love. It was her fourth studio album, released...
Fifth.
Oh, fifth. Good God. Okay, typo. Thank you. This is why we have Bradley. He is the expert. Well, I said
He's the
studio
fact
album.
checker.
Was it? I'm counting now.
Yeah, it was
Kick Inside,
Lionheart, Never Forever, The Dreaming, and then Hounds of Love.
You're right. Crap. That's what I get for typos. Anyway, thank you. But
This is why we have Bradley.
Released 40 years ago, so I feel a bit old now. 40 years ago this year, the album was in Rolling Stone's top 100 albums of all time at number 68 in their 2020 poll. That was before she had her big resurgence of Running Up That Hill, which was on Stranger Things season 4 in 2022 and catapulted her to all kinds of records that year of number one this and number one that and longest time between hits and so on. And then, of course, also kind of tipped her over to her long overdue induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which came in 2023. I think by that point, through Stranger Things, enough fans voted that they got her in. So now we get to talk about her today. So let's do some opening thoughts first. When you heard the album the first time and when you maybe first heard Kate Bush at all. So Liam, being the newest member of the Kate Club, we will have you start.
Well, it's funny that this question was on here because you, my man Robert, are actually responsible for introducing me to Kate Bush. It was, I can't remember what year, but it was a St. Patrick's Day had rolled around, and I was on my kick of just listening to all things Irish and folk and witchcraft and pagan and just, hugging trees and dancing in the sunlight and all that good stuff. And you were like, hey, I think you'll like this song, Jig of Life. And that was the first Kate Bush track that I ever heard. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so then, obviously I had heard Running Up That Hill because that's like her big single that everybody plays on their radio stations. But this was the first time actually listening all the way through this album. I had heard a couple of tracks on it, but this was the first time listening to it all the way through. And it was a really interesting experience for me.
That's fun. I can't wait to hear your thoughts later on as we move through. Bradley, when did you first hear Kate? And I'm guessing probably you heard this album the day it was released. But tell us about your Kate journey.
So I was born in 1970, so I was 7 years old when Kate arrived on the scene in sort of early 1978. And we had a show that was quite legendary here called Top of the Pops, which you may have heard of, which is all the new songs and acts all appeared on Top of the Pops. And I first saw Kate performing Wuthering Heights, which was her debut single in 1978 on Top of the Pops, and was completely transfixed to the point where I just completely nagged my mother for days and days until she bought me the record. So it was like love at first sight, really. But yes, I was therefore primed and ready for the release of Hounds of Love in September 1985. I remember the day vividly. I was at school about 20 miles from my hometown. I got the train home. I ran to the local independent record store where I always bought my records, and I picked up the vinyl album, grabbed it, ran home, and I remember I had a little sort of record player, stacked record player, and putting it on, sitting on the bed, and just holding the sleeve and shivering literally with the excitement. And yeah, so that was the first listen.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, props for being a very sophisticated 7-year-old who could, get into Kate Bush at that age. I think I was still listening to Mary Poppins, which is not a diss to Mary Poppins at all, but just Kate is kind of a little more complex than
It was also
Sherman.
the visuals, of course, because she was so unusual to watch because she did the dancing, and there was just something completely bewitching about her. Even then.
I felt that watching those music videos. That was a real trip watching those. And
Yeah.
she's just so like she reminds me of Hozier, this Irish artist that's getting a lot of talk right now, and I'm really a big fan of his. But like you get the feeling that like she's maybe not human. Like I think she's from like the other side of the veil or Tir na Nog or something.
It's kind of how I felt, because if you remember, well, you don't remember the 70s, you're way too young, but music
I was
pretty
not
homogenous in the 70s. There was disco, there was rock, and there wasn't much else. She just came as something completely out of left field that no one had ever heard before, and that was amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm a little enough older than you, Bradley, though. I was in high school when her first album came out, and here in the States too, we did have some video programs that were just barely beginning, and they were not great. But yeah, I saw her on one of those late on a Friday evening, I think, and there she was twirling and doing her cartwheels and singing, so high only dogs could hear. And I just said, I love her. Like I've always been kind of drawn to things that are outside the mainstream, and there was just something so different about her that I ran out and grabbed that album and then have been following along ever since. And of course, I heard Hounds of Love, like Bradley, on September 16th. I considered it a birthday gift because my birthday was a couple days earlier. So that was my big, it was like, she did this for me. This is a birthday present for me. And it was almost like a ritual. Like I was driving. I was not on a bike or anything, but I was or on the train. I drove out to our independent record store and bought it and came home. And I like closed the drapes and I like put candles on and I put it on my turntable because it was vinyl, only vinyl then. I suppose I could have bought a cassette, but I didn't like those as well. And because I like the big picture and the big liner notes and all that stuff. And just basically just sat there and listened to it with my eyes closed and was just transported. And that was just the A side. When I got to the Ninth Wave, I just stopped when it was over and just kind of couldn't function for a while because I was trying to take in what was the story I just heard and what is, it was just, the musicality was amazing, the storytelling was amazing, and it was just, to Bradley's point, so different than anything else you were hearing in the 80s. So yeah, love that album especially.
Yeah,
so,
I'm trying to think, like, I'm thinking through, like, all of the music that I've listened to from that era, like 70s and 80s. And, like, the closest thing I can think of is maybe, like, Jim Morrison's stuff, where, like, not just his stuff
he
with
was
the Doors,
earlier,
but,
of
like,
course, but
yeah, I'm just thinking, like, I'm trying to think of, like, stuff that, like, that's the closest thing I'm thinking of. But even then, that's, like, that's still very rock and roll, which, not that that's bad, but, like, this is like a whole other, like, she is just completely doing her own thing. Like, I'm gonna put the notes where I want.
Now we can talk about Tori Amos and other people that are kind of influenced by her, but she was so one of a kind. I know the name that got bandied about a lot at the time, because they actually collaborated, was Peter Gabriel, because he was doing similar kinds of things than Kate, but no one is doing exactly what Kate does. So
I think
comparisons are hard to make.
I think what's amazing about that album, though, is if someone played you that album and said this is a new release in 2025, you would believe it. There's nothing about that album that is dated because her production of that album, because the musicians she's used, the instruments she's used, they're all timeless. There's nothing. This doesn't feel like it's not a period piece. It's not an 80s album. And I think that's incredible.
Well,
And that's the reason why Running Up that Hill became number one again, like so many years, decades later.
Well, that is a perfect segue because I actually wrote those exact words, timeless, not
Sorry,
dated, in my notes. Okay. So let's talk about just three quick takeaways from the album. Just a thought, something that then or now. So Bradley, you've kind of started. Give us a couple more just kind of quick pops about your reaction to this album.
I think the thing that I was most taken by when I first heard it was just the complexity of it. It's such, in some ways, it's a very instant album. Perhaps one of Kate's most accessible works is because the songs, particularly on the Hounds of Love side, are very sort of catchy pop songs, really, but of her type. And sorry about that. Obviously taking all your points. And I think even now, today, I can listen to the album with headphones on and hear something I've never heard before in the mix. It's just orally so complex and interesting. And I think that showed a real maturity in her music. You can kind of track the development of how she got to where she got to at Hands of Love in her earlier albums. But I think this was like everything coming together for her as a producer and a musician, so and a songwriter. So that's one thing I'd like to say. And then I think the other thing, it did mark a real change in how female artists were viewed, because at the same time Madonna was breaking through, and I know they're very different artists, but particularly in the UK, there was a battle for number one on the album charts. One week it was Kate, the next week it was Madonna had knocked her off. The week after, Kate was back at number one. And it was really the first time that I can remember that two strong female artists were like at the top. And I think it did start this whole kind of change to women being taken a lot more seriously in the music industry. I mean, it's still not as we would like it today, but you could sense something new was happening, that there were these women that were in control of their careers. They weren't sort of byproducts of a male producer. They were calling the shots. And I found that really fascinating at the time. And I think Kate's gone on to kind of really develop as a singular artist.
Absolutely. This is the point where I'm going to plug. Bradley has a fantastic blog called Divas, Power of the Female Voice. And in 2014, which is another important year we'll get to in a little bit, you did this series of 50 Words for Kate, of course, a play on her 50 Words for Snow. Great, fascinating, fun essays. I read through them again the last couple of days, getting ready for this podcast. And Bradley has some amazing things to say about Kate Bush and other female vocalists. So be sure and check out his blog, Divas, The Power of the Female Voice. So enough of the plug. Liam, on to some quick observations from yourself.
I agree. The biggest takeaway that I got from that was timeless. It was funny listening to this album all the way through and seeing there are so many artists that I am listening to these days that are very similar to Kate. You listen to a lot of these women performing and you're like, oh, all of you grew up with Kate Bush or know Kate Bush in some way. Her influence is wide. It's almost like she's the Tolkien of her genre. She's the standard that everybody draws from at least a little bit subconsciously. The other thing that I thought of was just it's tight. When you listen to this album, at first you're just lost in the art and the messages and all of that. But when you really sit down and just analyze the music and the way these songs are constructed, it is tight, like a mathematical equation. Every note is exactly where it needs to be. All of the recordings of like dialogue and various things she's meshed in like last exactly as long as they need to. The fade ins, the fade outs, like it's just miraculous. Like I feel like I need like a corkboard and red yarn to like fully map out like the ins and outs of this whole thing. And then
I just say on that point, Liam, I think what's extraordinary as well is this was done at a time when there wasn't digital technology. So to put these various sounds and things into the mix was real manual work. It was
oh
real
my god,
skilled work.
yes.
And I think at this point we just need to mention Del Palma, who was her partner at the time and the engineer on the album. And the work that it took to put that all of those different all landscapes and sounds and musicians and instruments together, the intricacy of that work is absolutely incredible.
And to touch on that, I mean, I just finished a fantastic book I want to mention by Leah Cardos called The Hounds of Love, and it is part of the 33 and a third series of single album books. They're an amazing series. There's about 150 of them now, I think. This is the first one that Kate got, but Leah Cardos does a deep dive into the album, and she talks quite a bit about the recording process that Kate kind of developed her own studio. She was using equipment that was almost brand new technology at the time, different kinds of the Fairlight and different kinds of things. Much of it, both Cardos's musical analysis and also her technical analysis, was way beyond my knowledge because she's very knowledgeable about the subject and really specific, but fantastic book. But yeah, they were saying about the doing it all manually, Bradley, that they actually had to choreograph and had diagrams of the choreography for where they needed their hands to be to push the buttons up and down and slide things for the different things they wanted to do. So they would run through it and go, okay, this finger goes up on this button to 3, and then this one goes down at the same time to -2 and da da da. Just amazing. But yeah, the book Hounds of Love by Leah Carlos is fantastic, and everything you'd want to know about the references, literary references, as well as the recording equipment, as well as the chord progressions and what an A minor to an E flat means. It is a fantastic book. So thank you for letting me get that plug in as well, Liam.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely. I completely agree with. I didn't even think about that. Like, yeah,
they mentioned that in her studio and in her home, she had different rooms that she would record different things in. There was one room with a brick floor and stone walls, and there was another room that had wood, and they would even like move from room to room because different rooms gave different ambience and different sound qualities. You guys both touched on two of my points, which is super just dense and complex album, which is fantastic, but with catchy tunes. So, you kind of love that. And I think it's probably a great introduction to Kate Bush newbies, if there are any of you out there, because it's such a great accessible album with the Hounds of Love section, and then really Kate at her Katiest and at her best on Ninth Wave. And so I think it's a good way to start people on her, because then they can kind of move in either direction, either into her later albums or her earlier albums. But this one is kind of the representative ones. And because it is totally timeless, not dated at all. Her earliest albums are kind of a period. To me, they don't hold up as well as the newer work. I love them, but you hear them and you instantly think leg warmers and spandex and stuff.
Also, Robert, just quickly on that, don't forget she didn't produce those early albums,
right?
And she was never happy with them. So
she was under the EMI yoke. Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing I wanted to point out too, and I had to go back and do some math, but it is startling to me that she put this album out when she was 27 years old. And for someone to just have that much control over their language, their musicality, the technical aspects, all of it, at 27, I mean, I can't say that I was doing much at 27. And I certainly, I don't want to say she peaked with this album, but she was a complete master of all of the crafts and artistry. And she was 27. So I think that's kind of worth noting, because for those of us who only come to her in maybe more recent years, you will know her as middle-aged, getting up there. But no, she was a 27-year-old woman knocking this stuff out. So I think it's fantastic.
Well, and I think that's an important point to draw attention to as well, because The other very powerful emotion that I felt listening to this album, and why I agree with you, I think this is the best place to start if you've never heard Kate Bush before. The it's the word intimacy. Like, I felt like Kate was like in the room with me. I felt like Kate was talking to me, come close, sit with me, let me tell you a story. And it was really, really powerful. And I felt a very deep connection when I listened to this.
Yeah, you will enjoy, if you haven't heard it already, one of the B-sides, which we'll mention briefly later, but one of the B-sides that she recorded during this album period was called Under the Ivy. And it's one of my favorites of her songs anyway, but it is absolutely like someone just drawing you into their world and telling you a secret and sharing something with you they've never said. And it's just a lovely, beautiful song. And but yeah, she absolutely has that quality of being able to inhabit different characters and just immediately elicit a response. You know who she is, or what she is, and what she is trying to convey, and it's just such an art. Her earlier albums, especially, it's just like character studies, one after the other after the other. I think that really peaked with her second album with Lionheart. There's just so many characters in that album that are all distinct and also well executed and thought out.
It doesn't hurt me. Yeah, yeah. Do you wanna feel how it feels? Yeah, yeah. Do you wanna know that it doesn't hurt me? Yeah, yeah. Do you wanna hear about the deal they're making? It's you and me. And if only could, I'd make a deal with God, and I'd get him to swap our places.
So obviously we're all fans. So let's talk about some favorites. So let's favorite track on the album, Bradley. Can you pick out a single favorite track?
It's hard. I mean, I'm obviously Running Up That Hill is so kind of iconic that it's really hard to see past it. But I'm going to almost park that aside because I think it's such an emblem of everything, Kate, that it kind of is so obvious. I don't want to pick it, even though probably if I had a gun to my head, I'd say, yeah, it's obviously Running Up the Hill. But the other track on the album, which is really important to me, is Hello Earth from the Ninth Wave. And what I love about that song, it's right at the end of, it's like the penultimate track of the Ninth Wave. And going to what Liam said about the intimacy of Kate, that the lyrics of that track, they're very almost mundane day-to-day things, like, you know, she's imagining driving along with her partner on the seat asleep next to her, and you just feel like you are the person on the seat in the car with her. She's so emotional. The quality of her voice on that track, I think, is one of her best vocal performances. And I don't want to jump the gun too much because I know we're going to talk about Before the Dawn, the live show later on. But when she performed that live in the live show, it was such a special moment. It's a really extraordinary song. And I remember when I was a teenager not really liking it that much because I don't think I understood it. It's a song that you need to have lived. You needed to have lived enough life to have had someone you love in your life,
Well,
and,
yeah, 'cause
and have the
it's
fear of losing them. And
yeah, because it's so genuine and so heartfelt. It almost comes off as naive or simplistic. And as you age up, and I had the same reaction you do. You do learn to appreciate things and appreciate people in a way that when you're 20 and think you're immortal, you do not consider those things. So yeah. Fantastic. Liam, how about you? Do you have a favorite track from Hounds of Love? Well, the album, not the.
I was hoping that it would change, but I'm sorry to say it didn't. Jig of Life is still the best track on this album. Like,
well, it would be up there for me too.
I mean, I'm a big fan of, I've already said I'm a big fan of that style of music, but the way she like blends it with her own voice and sort of this ahead of her time modernity that she had, it's so powerful, and it just gives me a rush every time. And it feels very like it's funny that it's called Jig of Life because it feels very defiant in the way that like I feel like a human life is kind of defiant. Like we the way we have evolved is that like there are other animals have better evolutionary like hunting techniques. Like we don't have claws or sharp teeth anymore, and yet we are still like the most powerful being on this planet because of our minds. And I feel like that's the sensation that I get listening to Jig of Life. It's like the defiant force that is a human mind that like knows itself, knows what it wants to be, and is just going for it.
It's also incredibly exciting, that track, that last like part of the track where all of the fiddles start playing and then they build on each other. And
it's so really good.
It just catches, you have to catch your breath. It's so exciting. And actually then it leads into Hello Earth. And I actually think Hello Earth is more powerful because of Jig of Life. So I think those two tracks have an amazing interconnection.
I agree. My favorite Jig of Life is right up there and probably would make it, but I'm going to switch off and go to the predatory animals and go with Hounds of Love. I now granted I love my hounds. You know, we have 3 otter hounds, so hounds are a big part of our life anyway. But I love the song. I love the metaphor. I love just the percussive beat of the song. I just love at the end where she's kind of like, I need love, 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 love. She just kind of spins out on this after being afraid of the whole thing and running from it. At the end, she just kind of stops and is like, no, I need it. Which I think is a fun turn. I just think that is such a fun song. And so I'm gonna pick that as my favorite.
Can I just say quickly on that? So I remember sitting on my bed playing the album for the first time. I kind of used Running Up That Hill, so that had already been out as a single, so I knew that backwards. So I used that as a kind of the track to calm me down, waiting to see what was going to come next. And the start of that track, Hands of Love, which is the second track, it's in the trees, it's coming. And I literally just shot up, like, oh my God, what's happening? And then that track is incredible. It's like 3 minutes of pop perfection, isn't it? Yeah. It's just such a great song. And I just wonder if Liam has heard, and I'm sure you've heard this, Robert, on the 12-inch single, when that came out as a single, they had the alternative Hounds of Love.
Yes.
Which was almost the same backing track, but Kate doing this most incredible kind of wacky kind of vocal, like alternative vocal version. It was the same song, but it was from another dimension.
Oh my God, yes. It's so bizarre.
I
hunted it down. It was so bizarre.
And I love they're mostly the same, but I think I love the string arrangement in that version too. It's just these sawing, dun, 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 dun. It's a fantastic.
Yeah, no, that if you think you get a rush out of the original Hounds of Love, dear listeners, please check out that 12-inch because it's a whole other ride.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I really liked Hounds of Love too because speaking to what you said, Robert, with like the way she gives in at the end, the whole vibe of this song in Greek mythology, like there are different kinds of love, and Eros, the romantic one, is seen by the Greeks as like a type of madness, like it's a thing to be feared. Like I can't remember which story it is, but there's like a riddle of like which god is the most fearsome, and it's Eros because even the other Olympians themselves are subject to his power. So like he's the most terrifying. So I loved Kate capturing the emotion of like almost like falling in love for the first time. Like, you know, when you're already going through puberty, you go through all these emotions and changes, and then you feel such a deep, intimate connection to another person in a way that you've never felt before. It's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because one of the things I love about Kate, and this is going to be the longest podcast ever, so we will try and speed along eventually, or Dayton can make us a 2-parter. But she references Greek mythology in a couple of her songs, as well as Arthurian legend, and I mean, obviously Bronte.
Oh my God, so much metaphor. She's so deep, you guys.
I know. There's one more reason I love her. We can like nerd out about books together if I ever get to meet her. But at any rate, so we've found a favorite track. I'm guessing this is going to be kind of a quick no-brainer, but Bradley, favorite side, Hounds or Ninth Wave?
Well, I kind of feel like Hands of Love side is a bit like a greatest hits because it's obviously 4 singles and another track. So definitely the Ninth Wave for me is it was just such an evolution of Kate's music, and she also took something that was quite a corny concept, which was the concept album, which had kind of gone out of fashion at that time, was seen as something very prog rock and a bit kind of dated, and to have that whole journey of the story in musical form in about 30 minutes was just extraordinary to me at 15 when I heard it. And I think it still is such a powerful piece of music, the whole thing.
Fantastic. I'm going to jump in for our younger listeners because this came up before we started recording. Back in the day, of Bradley and myself, we bought vinyl albums that had two sides, and of course, the younger people now are getting back into that. So if you were listening to this ever first on CD, or if you streamed it, records had sides, A side and a B side. And so that's what we mean about that. A little history lesson for you whippersnappers out there. But at any rate, how about you, Liam? A favorite side between the two?
Yeah, I gotta kind of give it to the Ninth Wave, even though the Hounds of Love side is probably something I would listen to more, if for no other reason than it has cloud busting, which like I loved that so much as it was, and then I watched the video and read an article about the video and why Donald Sutherland was in it. I could go on about that for like ever.
Well, we'll get to videos in a little bit.
Oh boy. Oh, okay, good. So like I love cloud busting so much. So like, the Hounds of Love is a bit more of the poppy side, and that's easier to listen to, but like the Ninth Wave side, man, like you go on I like concept albums because like I enjoy songs flowing from one to the other and being like connected. But so I really loved the powerful, powerful story she's telling in the Ninth Wave. I was listening to this at work and on my breaks and kind of like going in and out the first time I listened through, and then I got to Waking the Witch, and you hear that voice at the beginning say "Wake up," and I was like, "Whoa, who's here with me?"
You've been caught on your break listening to Kate Bush. Yeah.
Kate Bush, are you here with me? Ah.
Yeah, it's unanimous. Ninth Wave is my favorite as well.
Just one hand held up hard, I can blot you out of sight. Peekaboo, peekaboo, little love.
Again, you are giving me the best transitions, Liam. So let's talk about favorite videos. I'll let you go first because I'm guessing I might know which is your favorite of the four. So from the album, there were 4 videos, just to let everybody know, 4 videos for the songs on the A side, and then around the time of the Before the Dawn concerts in 2014, she created another video of And Dream of Sheep that is amazing in its own right. So of the 5, kind of main videos of this album, which is your favorite, Liam?
Yeah, I gotta go with Cloud Busting.
Yep,
like,
thought so.
It was like I enjoyed it just when I was watching because I was like, oh, he's got that huge pendulum thing in his office, and like the machine that they wheel up to the top of the hill is just so like it reminded me of George Méliès's A Trip to the Moon. And I just loved, and Donald Sutherland's there, and I love Donald Sutherland. And then I read this article, like really breaking down that she was wanting to make art. She didn't want to just make a video to promote the single. She wanted to like make a little short film based on the book that inspired this song. And the article goes on to talk about how Donald Sutherland initially refused, and then she went to his hotel room and like poured her soul out to him, and he agreed to do it. And the special like pseudo father-daughter relationship that they developed while making it, it's just such a beautiful story. But I really enjoy that video. It just felt so powerful, and I love at the end when she runs up to the top and starts working the machine and makes the storm appear. It just, it's so powerful. It was so just a rush of like, yes, fight the power.
A couple years back, you might not have seen this yet. You can look for it on YouTube. She did a reissue of this album, and the Baskerville edition, it was called. Another nice literary reference there to her hounds.
Yes.
And there's about a 4.5 minute video she did, basically an unboxing video, this Baskerville edition, but it's almost like a sequel to the cloud busting video. It goes into a little bit more of the story. And of course, because Kate is Kate and knows everybody, this one does not have Donald Sutherland in it, but it does have Sir Ian McKellen narrating it. So, because they hang out too, because when you're them, that's what you do.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, a little quick random aside. We visited England for the first time in 2022 and went to Oxford, and there was a pub there that I wanted to go visit, a LGBTQ pub, and we went, and it was fun. And 6 months later, I read that Ian McKellen was there, and then Kate Bush popped in, and so he and Kate hung out at this pub. And I'm like, I've been to that pub. I'm with them, in my mind. Anyway, I was
100%.
If only, Robert. If only.
Yeah, I was not with them. But anyway, Bradley, I'm really curious about this one, especially. Your favorite video from this album?
It's a really tough call, but I actually think it's the Running Up That Hill video, because we've touched already on Kate's dancing, and certainly in her early videos, she studied with Lindsay Kemp, who's a famous kind of mime and movement sort of teacher who taught David Bowie and others. So her early videos were very, should we say, experimental dance-wise. But the Running Up That Hill video, she's dancing with another dancer, and a sort of male dancer, and there's no lip syncing in the video. It's just dance, and it's so beautifully choreographed and filmed. She looks incredibly beautiful in every shot. Not that she doesn't always, but it's just the cinematography of it is incredible. But one of the things that always makes me laugh is that MTV wouldn't play it because she didn't lip sync. Basically, they thought it was too arty and people wouldn't be interested. So they ended up using a TV performance she did in one of the UK TV performances promoting the single instead. But I think they really were wrong, because I think it's a complete work of art, that video. It's just breathtaking to watch. And although I could make arguments for all the other videos from the album, that's the one to me that I could sit and watch on loop till the end of time.
Nice.
I mean, 2025, jokes on them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
I had that on my list. The dancing is exceptional, as you said. I mean, her dancing throughout her career has always been kind of part of the work, but this was so exceptional. But I felt the one segment where they're coming along the corridor and people are wearing all the masks and all that. That to me, I don't want to say it's dated, but it doesn't seem to fit in the same way. So if it was just all the dancing, it probably Hounds would have, Running Up That Hill would have been my winner. But it is not. And speaking of her beauty, I think Kate was at her most beautiful. I mean, she's always been a stunning woman, but in this period, she was just stunning. I also love the Hounds of Love itself video, the Hitchcock references. Yeah. That is the one I just think she is just gorgeous and radiant. It's like she could have probably had a film career or a modeling career if she had not been the polymathic talent she is. But my winner, weirdly, is Big Sky. And I liked it just because, unlike the things I've been praising about her ambiguity and her complexity and all her different personas and characters, it is just unambiguous joy. It is just fun. It is dancing. It is silly. She's doing hand claps. There's an audience. And it's just fun to kind of see, and who knows, this may have been a persona as well, but it was just fun to see just Kate just getting out there and shaking it and singing. And then, of course, we have astronauts and Superman and giraffes and all kinds of other crazy things going on in it. So it is just, when I need to pick me up and I'm feeling a little blue, I can watch that video and just I'm standing up and I'm dancing and I love it a lot.
It's great fun. It's definitely great fun.
It's unlike a lot of hers, because it's not telling a story exactly. It's not complex. It's not something else. But not my favorite video of her. All of her videos that would have to go to Love and Anger. That's my favorite of her videos. Okay. Just for those of you who wondered. Anyway, all right. So now kind of delving out of Hounds of Love and into her wider career, although we seem to be doing that a lot anyway. But I'll start with you again, Bradley. What is your favorite Kate Bush album?
That is such a difficult question. It's like choosing your favorite
Which is your
child, I
favorite
imagine.
child? Tell us. Tell
Yeah,
us
I don't
now.
have children, so I'm assuming that's difficult. um, it's Ariel, actually. So, for people who don't know Kate's career, she vanished for a long time in the early 90s. She released an album called The Red Shoes in 1993, and then kind of vanished for a long time, and then came back in 2005 with a double album. And for me, it was called Ariel, and for me, it's the spiritual sister of Hounds of Love, really, because again, the first album this time was all separate songs, 7 songs, and then the second album was another concept piece. The first album was called A Sea of Honey, and the second album was called A Sky of Honey. And Sky of Honey is basically Kate going through a day. She starts sort of in the afternoon in the garden, and you kind of go through the night and coming to the dawn, and it's all told. It's so. If we talk about how intricate and complex and interesting the Ninth Wave was for me, the Sky of Honey is Kate's masterpiece because it's just absolutely incredible. The sounds, the complexity of the music. It's if you've never heard Ariel, it would, I think maybe do start with Hands of Love if you've never played Kate before, but then I would go straight to Ariel as the next album, because to me it was also because she'd been away for 12 years and she'd taken her she always takes her time. If you're a Kate Bush fan, the number one thing you need to learn to do is wait, because things don't come quickly, but when they come, they're worth it. And she'd obviously worked on this album for a long time before it was released, and what she also done is matured as a songwriter, so the songs are longer. They kind of average sort of 6-7 minutes, a lot of the songs, which means there's a lot of space in them. There's a lot more freedom in her sort of music, I think, in on that album. And it took me a long time to realize that it had become my favorite album. It was probably around the time that the live shows happened in 2014. I suddenly thought, yeah, that to me is the ultimate work that she's done. I do think it's a masterpiece.
I agree. I like that one a lot, not as much as I like Hounds, but because after going into so many different personas and so many different stories, it is really simple. I mean, it to your point, it kind of this woman going through this day and observing nature and thinking about things, and it should be dull, and it is not. And it's interesting to see that she's not, in Wuthering Heights, and she's not Houdini, and she's not all these other different roles that she's portrayed. She's just a person in nature with bird calls and things. And I love it a lot. I just, for some reason, it did not hit me the same way that Hound does. So yeah, I'm going to have to say my favorite album of Kate's is definitely Hounds of Love, although Ariel is a close second. I love the first 2 albums a lot, but to me, they're very much personally of a particular time and place in my life. And so they don't transcend the same way that the other ones do. But I think I skipped Liam. So we made you listen to this album straight through. Have you had a chance to hear any other albums, or is this your default favorite?
Yeah, I'm very sorry, guys. I was trying to fit in some time to listen to more albums, and I just ran out of time.
It begs the question: will you listen to more Kate Bush albums after this?
Oh God, yeah, man. Are you kidding me? I'm trying to get the, like, as we've been talking, I've been like downloading more onto my iPod.
Well, as we say on this podcast, physical media is better, and I do have all of these on vinyl, and then on the original CD releases, and then also on the remastered CD releases. So come on by, and you can take your pick of what format you want to listen to them in.
I was about to say, you have vinyls, and I have a record player. That's I'm gonna have to take you up on that. I'm gonna have to pillage your library there, my dude.
I'm just
All
so
right.
envious right now of Liam having all of those albums to listen to for the first time.
I
I
know.
know, right?
As you and I'm sure heard the radio interview earlier this year or late last year, where she said she might be working on some new
Yeah.
things, and half of Kate held their breath and went, like when, what, but I'm
You
just
guys
putting
haven't
it.
had a new things for so long, and
Yeah,
I get to
Yeah.
as she
experience
says,
all the
I
things
just
anew.
I just put that moment here, as she says, because I can't let
Right.
myself think about the possible new Kate thing, because it might be a decade before we see
Well,
it,
I
or
did
never,
laugh
or
because everyone was getting excited as if it was about to come out. And I thought, she said, I'm starting to think about making an album, which in Kate language means it's at least 5 years away.
if she's not gardening and hanging out with Bertie and doing her other stuff.
Good for
Exactly.
her.
But every time it rains, you're here in my head, like the sun coming out. Ooh, I just know that something good is gonna happen. I don't know when, but just saying I could even make it happen. On top of the
We're going to take a dark turn now and not be gushing about all things Kate Bush. Do either of you just jump in? Are there any duds on this album? Are there any tracks or cuts you just don't think are up to snuff or belong on this album?
I think it's a bit harsh to call it a dud, but on the Hounds of Love side, there's a track called Mother Stands for Comfort, which was the only track on that first side that wasn't released as a single. And it's just not up to the quality of the rest of the album. It is the only track you could argue is put on as a filler. It's a story song again, which so many of Kate's are. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. For me to say I don't like it as much as the other Kate songs, there's no Kate song I don't like, just to be clear. We all rank things, and I do think when I play the album even now, when it comes to that track, I do like it, but it's like I'm waiting for it to be over to get to Cloud Busting. So
I
yeah,
have the exact same notes, exact same thoughts about that song. It was my pick for those same reasons. And to your point, it is not a bad song. On lots of other albums, it would be a great song, but on this album, it is a little dip in the road.
Yeah.
I can justify it just by saying it's a good break, because the other four songs are all fairly up tempo and fairly energetic, and it gives you a nice little break coming out of Big Sky before you get into Cloud Busting,
it's a
where you
different
can
mood, isn't it? So it does
take a
it does,
breather, but
yeah.
it does seem like it just came out of a different album and she just kind of dropped it in. Liam, any tracks on this that just did not work for you, or you think didn't sit right with the album?
Yeah, again, like saying that it's a dud is a little harsh. It's not necessarily that it is bad by any means. It's just not really for me. I might end up starting a fight with you guys, so be prepared. I wasn't digging and Dream of Sheep. I wasn't. I'm sorry. I wasn't it's not that it's bad. I can tell that this is a good song, and what she's doing here works and it's smart. I'm just not following it. I listened to the song with lyrics, and then it was one of the music videos that you had us watch. And so I was like, oh, Cloud Busting, that video, like I already liked Cloud Busting, to be fair, but like that video made me enjoy it even more. So maybe if I watch the video for In Dream of Sheep, it'll help it read with me more. And it was like, okay, yeah, you're just floating in the water in your life vest singing your song. And I'm like, I can tell that, like, this is a piece of art. This is a statement. And I get that that's what you're doing. I don't know what it is you're saying. So I'm having a hard time connecting with it because it's just, I'm not getting it. I know that you're painting me a picture. I just don't know what it is.
If it were a standalone single, just a release on its own, I would be with you and kind of be like, well, this is weird. But if you think of Ninth Wave as a 30-minute suite of a story, it's kind of like dissing the overture to a show or something, because it is the setup for everything else that comes after. And if you don't have it, it would be missed. But I agree that just as like a standalone thing, I don't know if I would recommend anyone just, hey, pop this in and listen to this cut.
Although that
It is
is Jonathan's, my husband's, is his favorite song on Hounds of Love.
really.
Yeah,
Oh
he
no!
loves that song. Yeah. And I think the video as well, it's worth saying that the video was made to go into the live show. So it wasn't kind of
I got you.
conceived as a music video as such.
Well, and
So out of the context of the live show, it doesn't perhaps hold up as a promotional video would normally.
Well, and
Well,
like
and-
I said, I'm not saying it's bad by
Oh,
any
sure,
means.
sure.
Like it's a very well made video. It's a beautifully performed song. You know, she looks great doing it. I just like I've had this problem before on occasion where like someone, particularly with performance art, like somebody's making a piece of art and I'm not going to say it's bad just because I don't understand it, but I'm having a hard time connecting with it
Yeah,
when
fair enough.
when I can tell that you're making a statement, but I don't know what it is. Like,
there's a great quote. I forget who said it, but I like it a lot. That somebody said once, if you like it, you understand it. You know, people are like, well, I don't understand it. Well, if you like it, you understand it. That's all you need to do. Well, you fellas keep handing me great transitions. So Bradley, yeah, well, to set this up, in 2014, Kate astonished everyone by doing her first sit-down live show since 1979. She announced a concert called Before the Dawn out in London. And I think that if I had read right, the tickets for the first initial release of tickets sold out in just minutes. They added 7 more performances. Altogether, 80,000 people got to see this concert, which was, again, first time she'd performed in years. And Bradley was one of those lucky people. And he and Jonathan were kind enough, because I was stateside at that time. They sent me a piece of confetti, which I still have on my bulletin board, and a nice keychain from that. It has been rumored that we may get a video of this concert. Again, long awaited. There was an album released of on 3 CDs of the concert itself, but Bradley was actually there, and as one segment of it was an extension of the Hounds of Love story, particularly the Ninth Wave segment. So, Bradley, tell us a little bit about the experience of Before the Dawn, what it was and what it meant to you.
It's by far, I mean, I'm obviously as a huge Kate Bush fan, I would say this, but it's by far the most spectacular live concert I've ever been to. To call it, it's like it was like a Broadway production. So it was cut into 3 acts. The first act was Kate kind of just came on stage with her band and sang just songs straight, so that was almost like a regular kind of rock concert. She just kind of stood at the front of the stage and sang, and she did Running Up That Hill, she did Hounds of Love. So it was like, okay, it's amazing. Kate Bush is on stage, and like everyone was like absolutely losing it. And I think at this point I just want to say that feeling in the room was like nothing I've ever experienced. I've seen thousands of artists live, a lot of the great artists, and I've been in a room with lots of fans where you feel an energy, but the energy in that room at that concert with Kate was unbelievable. It's just it was just a slither below hysteria. I think it was kind of contained hysteria. I don't think any of us could believe that we were there and she was on stage singing. So, and then the final track in that first act was King of the Mountain, which is the single off the Ariel album mentioned earlier. And that kind of ended. It's a story. There's a storm in that story, and at the end, she extemporized on this storm, and the storm is rising. A storm is rising, and the confetti that you mentioned at the end of that number, basically, one of the band came on and with a noisemaker and was just kind of making this kind of whirring noise, and then suddenly these 2 cannons shot out all of this confetti into the audience. So it was like this, like, oh my goodness, what's happening kind of moment. And it then went straight into the Ninth Wave sort of sequence. She performed the entirety of the Ninth Wave as Act 2. And
the video you mentioned for "And Dream of Sheep" was the starting of that, right?
Yeah.
After
Yeah. So Kate's concept of it was when she appeared on video, it was real life. And then when she was on stage, it was the fantasy. So
Okay.
it was her kind of her dreamscape. because obviously the story of the ninth wave is a woman lost at sea. So you saw at the end, Dream of Sheep video was like the start of it, and so that was her kind of live. In reality, she was lost at sea, and then you went into her dreamscape as she'd lost consciousness, and it was just remarkable. It's so hard to describe it because it was very theatrical. Obviously, Kate, if you've seen her videos and live and performances, you know she's very theatrical in when she puts visual images to her music. So it used lots of movement. It wasn't dance so much as movement, because I think Kate's dancing days perhaps are behind her now, but it used a lot of moving. It used incredible masks, incredible sort of theatrical sort of techniques to kind of shock and surprise you. To what you would have loved, Liam, when they did Jig of Life, they had these incredibly huge folds of white cloth, which they created waves with. It was just stunning.
Wow.
There was so much. It's every kind of song. There was a different technique used to bring out the story of. And then Hello Earth, my favorite song. She's basically singing that, clinging to a boy that's kind of on the stage, like boys out at sea, which had the lights on, and. At the end of that song, she kind of falls off the boy and she's carried off the stage into the audience by these fish people. So Kate's label is called Fish People. And in the ninth wave, there are actual fish people who have these incredible sort of sculpted fish heads. Yeah, it was breathtaking. And then there was an interval where we all needed at least one or two drinks to kind of calm down.
Have a good cry, and then
there was lots of tears, and like everyone just going, "Oh my God, did that just happen? Is this really happening? Can someone slap me?" And then and then we had a little break and came back, and then Act 3 was the whole of Sky of Honey from Ariel. So that sort of journey through a day. And the thing that I didn't mention about that, which is incredible, was light is a big motif in that piece. And obviously, when you're listening to it, obviously you can imagine the light, but the way that Kate used light and shade in telling that story, with puppetry and all kinds of things happening. A tree fell through a piano. Kate flew out into the audience at the end. It was such an incredible event. Yes, it has been filmed. I'm not as confident as you, Robert, that it will ever see the light of day, because I think the problem was it was filmed by two static cameras, because Kate didn't want cameras to kind of interfere with the show. So I have a feeling that she's not happy that it tells the story in the way that she would want, which is why I think we ended up with the album rather than the DVD. I hope one day it's released, because so few people got to experience it, and it's something that
I'm getting
everyone should have a chance to see.
Goosebumps just hearing your description of it, and
I don't think I've ever been more jealous of somebody about anything. Like few times have I felt such envy of a person right now.
Yeah. And to make it worse for you, Liam, she came on to do 2 encores. She did a track called Among Angels, which was from 50 Words for Snow, which was just her and the piano, and you could hear a pin drop. It was literally the whole audience was just rapt, and then she ended with Cloud Busting, and we all sang along, and it was just unbelievable. Yeah, it was everything I could have ever dreamed of, because I never thought I'd ever see Kate live. I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that, she's never going to talk, she'll never play live again, I'll never get to see her. And the day we were living in LA at the time that this was announced, and my husband Jonathan woke me up at 4 a.m, and I thought, oh God, what happened? Someone died. He said Kate Bush is playing live. I just kind of laughed and said, what's going on? He said, no, honestly, it's all been announced. And he showed me like the news story that this was happening. And the week between the announcement and the tickets going on sale was the most stressful week of my life. I cannot tell you how fearful I was that I wouldn't get tickets. I knew the demand would just
You
be
called
so
in sick,
immense.
sat there at the computer,
Oh,
like waiting to hit the button.
Refresh,
no,
refresh. Yeah.
get this. It was like 3 in the morning LA time that the tickets were on sale.
Oh God,
And I
no!
got them into my car, and then my credit card wasn't accepted. I literally almost had an
No!
aneurysm.
Oh my God, no!
Thankfully, I had a second card, and that went through. But yeah, honestly,
Oh
and then
man.
this was March 2014, and the shows were in September that I'd booked. And then it's like, I've got to stay alive for 6 months now. I actually, I don't care what happens after that, but I must. I crossed roads really carefully. I drove a lot slower than normal. I took my vitamins. I don't care what happens the rest of my life, but I've got to make it to September the 6th.
That is fantastic. I still wish I had been there. You were talking about the audience response, and I listened to that section, the ninth grade section the other day, and the response during Morning Fog, which is another song on that album I just love. But as she is thanking her brother and thanking her son and thanking who were in the show, and just the audience just screaming and like losing their minds. It comes through so well on the album, even without the visual. And it's interesting too. We on our London trip, never having gotten to see Kate, and probably never will. It happened when we were in London that a group called Baby Bushka, a kind of tribute group to Kate Bush, was performing not far from where we were staying in London. So we got tickets and went and saw them, and it was a fantastic, fun evening. They have since disbanded, which is sad. And weirdly, they were from San Diego, and I lived in Southern California my whole life till 15 years ago, and never heard of them. And then we're in Ohio now, and saw them in London. Anyway, but that was a very, very small room in a very small club, and the fan love for Kate Bush, and by extension by the Baby Bushka women, it was extraordinary. I had all of a sudden 70 more best friends because everybody was like, who are you? And why do you love Kate? And what about this? And there were sing-alongs, and there was dancing, and it was obviously an infinitesimal amount of what the actual Kate experience was. But I think it speaks to her fans and how much she means to people, that even this tribute group could elicit just cheering and screaming and tears and hugging strangers and all of that. So again, I'll join Liam in the envy parade of wishing for that. So Liam, I'm going to leave you out of this just a minute because I'm going to guess you don't have anything to contribute, but if you do, jump in. I'm just curious, Bradley. It's not really even in the notes, but she's done remasters of a bunch of her albums. I'm sure you've listened to them. Just quick, what do you think of the remastered Hounds of Love, or any of them, compared to the original? Do you for them, against them, ambivalent?
I actually think they're incredible because, especially, I think when the albums came out initially on CD, they weren't very well mastered. And I think particularly because Kate records an analog. So when they were transferred to digital, they just weren't dynamic enough. They didn't, I think, have sort of the right range of the actual sound that I remember on vinyl. So it felt to me like literally every note had been taken out, polished, and put back in. And if you listen to particularly Kick Inside and Dreaming, those albums, it's like hearing them again for the first time. And it's almost like hearing them live. And what I would really recommend people who if you get into Kate, there's you can buy high-res audio digital versions of these remastered albums. And as I said earlier, I'm still finding things in the mix of Hounds of Love that I've not heard before. And these high-res versions are like studio quality. So 24-bit, so that's very nerdy. They're 24-bit sort of audiophile versions. And that, for me, is the way to listen to those albums. I will sit down, a glass of gin in my hand in the darkened room, put on those 24-bit remastered albums, and it's just pure joy. So I think they're the best remasters I've heard of any artist's work, and the fact she was incredibly involved in them, and I think they've actually led to her wanting to do all of these re-released albums and things. And I think it's she's kind of, I think, personally become quite fascinated with this idea of mastering now. So I'm quite interested to see where that goes with the new album, and I'm sure she'll be involved in all of that part of it now. Whereas perhaps she maybe left that to someone else in the past. But yeah, they're definitely worth listening to.
I agree. I have them all, and I'm conflicted a little bit. I agree with everything you're saying, but for me, I've listened to the other ones from vinyl onto CD and so on. They're kind of like my comfort food, and the remasters are kind of like the gourmet version, and in every way they're better. But like I kind of miss my Kraft mac and cheese sometimes, so I find myself wavering between just the comfort and kind of audio memory of the originals that I listened to for 20 and 30 years and more, versus the other ones where I'm kind of like, this isn't right. My analytical brain goes, that's not right, not the right sound, it's not the right whatever. Even though I know, my other half of my brain is saying, well, that's actually better and clearer, and but it just they come off to me sometimes as slightly off, which is a weird response. I
No, I
remember
understand that.
years ago, as CDs were coming into the marketplace in a big way, I bought everything I had on vinyl that I could. I got on CD. There were a couple albums that I like. They did not have like the pop that maybe my vinyl had. That I was so used to hearing like a particular pop during a part of a song or a skip, that they were so ingrained, no pun intended, ingrained in my head that on the CD, not having them there, even then, it stood out as like that's not what I'm used to. That's not my thing. I got over it, but I guess I like my old timey stuff, and but so I
For
like the
me,
remasters,
yeah.
but I tend to fall back on the original releases before I go
For
to the
me,
remasters.
I'm a very obedient Kate Bush fan, and as you know, she was given the CBE by Queen Elizabeth, which stands for Commander of the British Empire, and a lot of us fans will call her Commander. And she said when she released those remasters that these were the definitive versions of the album. So for me now, I feel almost disloyal if I go and listen to the old
Well,
versions.
I have them all. I have followed her on her journey every step, but so I do have them. But I
No,
just
I do
tend to
understand. There's
I
something
relapse.
about when you first play it, even if you have a little skip or something in an album that you
Yeah,
played a lot, if that's
yeah.
missing, yeah,
That's yeah,
it's an
exactly.
emotional connection, isn't it?
And it again, I mentioned Under the Ivy as just being one of my favorites of all her songs. But there were some B-sides from this album as well. So Under the Ivy and Handsome Cabin Boy, Burning Bridge, and My Leg in Love, and I think those were the only four, right? Besides like the extended versions and dance
Not This
versions and
Time was the B-side to
oh
Big
yeah,
Sky.
yeah. And you might be interested in some of those, Liam. Handsome Cabin Boy and My Leg in Love are traditional British. I think one is Irish and one is British tunes.
I heard them. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I think when she went to Ireland with Dell when they were doing this album and she was wandering about, I think she decided to lay down some cuts of traditional songs because she's not done a ton of covers, but these are well, not really covers, they're traditional songs. But yeah, interesting selection to go along with it.
Well,
Burning
and
Bridge
My
is
Lachlan Love just breaks my heart. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite traditional
yeah.
Irish tunes, and it like Sinead O'Connor does a great version of it, but like any version will bring a tear to my eye. And so like when I got to that B-side, I was like, "Oh, Kate, you sang a song for me." She did not.
I should have known you.
I wasn't even in existence at the time she recorded that, but it's like, "Oh, you gave me a gift, Kate. Thank you."
Liam is known for his deep dives. I should have figured you would have listened to the B-sides. I
did. I did
did you
get
wrong by thinking you would not have listened to them.
I didn't have time to get to any other albums, but I got through everything that was connected to this.
Well, fantastic, fantastic. You do good homework. That's fantastic.
I try my
Um,
best.
so as we kind of wrap up, because we could go on and on, but we talked so much about it. Any final words on the album, Liam? You want to contribute?
Yeah, I gotta say, I loved hearing you guys break down the storytelling side and pointing out because I was getting the sensation of like being lost and having to break free and like re-find yourself on the ninth wave, be found, find yourself, all that sort of thing. I didn't get the specific metaphor of a woman lost at sea, and I feel kind of stupid now because I have in my notes on Waking the Witch, she keeps repeating blood red roses, pinks and posies go down. That's a sea shanty. That is she's moved the order around a little bit, but it's one of my favorites actually. They play it in a version of Moby Dick, but they play it in a version of Moby Dick. It's just this really good, strong shanty, and it's one of those ones that's like, oh, we're going around Cape Horn, it's cold, it's wet, like this sucks, but we're gonna do it to get the whale oil. And so like that track coming after Under the Ice, I thought was really, really sharp. Because it's like, oh, hey, you're referencing that song that's about breaking through ice to get to the whales. That's clever. And now that I know that the whole thing is supposed to be a woman lost at sea, I'm like, oh, that makes so much more sense now. Why didn't I get that?
So, and on a scale of 1 to 5 albums, how many records would you give this one?
10.
Fair. I will allow it. Two different sides. We'll give it a 10.
I'm breaking your scale. She basically made 2 albums and put it on one. There's 5 for each side.
Fair enough. I like that. I'm all about the rule breaking. All righty. Bradley, any last thoughts? Anything we didn't touch on that you want to share with the Kate's fandom?
Yeah, I'd just like to talk just very briefly about the kind of historical context of this album, because I think now, with Kate being such an icon, that we kind of all think the Hounds of Love was just a foregone conclusion. But in 1985, I remember early in 1985, there was a newspaper article, Where Are They Now? And Kate Bush was the person. And there were loads of rumors that she'd moved to France or she'd gained 20 stone, because her previous album, The Dreaming, although it's a huge fan favorite, had been a bit of a commercial disaster. It was the first album she'd produced herself. It had had one hit single on it. And people had kind of thought of her as a bit of a novelty act, and that perhaps, her time was done. So to come back with Hounds of Love was so triumphant, and really just kind of answered all of her critics, both sort of in the music industry, but also in the record company, and it also marked a huge shift in the amount of, she always had a lot of control over what she did, but this was like shutting the door on any idea that anyone else would have a say in what she did and how she presented herself and her music. So I think it's worth remembering that, we were so fortunate that Kate carried on and made this album, and everything that's come after it. It is, I think, the best album by any artist of the last, since popular music existed. Although it's not my personal favorite of her albums, I absolutely recognize that it's the strongest and most complete album that she's made. And if you've never listened to it, you must.
Nice. Well, I think that must be another 5 or possibly a 10 or 12.
If Liam's having 10, I'm having 10.
Oh, fair enough. All right. I have to agree. It's funny. I really have a soft spot for the Dreaming album, but it was uneven. And now in kind of in hindsight, it was a lot of experimenting. It was like she just throwing something over here and trying this and trying that, and let's do some sampling and let's do this character. And it doesn't cohere the same way that obviously this one does, but and her albums afterward. And so
but to be clear, sorry, Rob, to be clear, there would be no Hands of Love without The Dreaming.
Oh yeah,
I think
absolutely.
She learned so much from that album. It's what allowed her to create Hands of Love.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny, looking backwards now, you can see seeds of Hounds of Love in The Dreaming, where it was like she was trying to, which is why I think The Dreaming is not as strong an album, because she was stretching her wings and trying new things and experimenting, and then it all coalesced into this masterpiece that we got all those years later.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
Well, it sounded to me like she was really ahead of her time, and so, like, I think probably the reason why The Dreaming kind of flopped is, I'll have a more solid opinion when I listen to it, but it sounds to me like the reason why it flopped is because she was doing this thing that had really never been done before, so she had to, probably invent a lot of these techniques.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, and that if I'm envious of any of the albums you get to listen to new, The Dreaming would be there. It was my favorite for a very long time, The Dreaming. And it's extraordinary. It is extraordinary. But I agree with Robert. There's something you can tell this is a work in progress on The Dreaming. Whereas when you get to Hounds of Love, you feel okay. She's there now. She's got it.
The Dreaming has some of my favorite individual tracks of hers, individual songs, but it also has some of my least favorite. And I think that just because it was so experimental. So Dayton, what we're doing now is laying the seed for a follow-up Kate episode on The Dreaming. Just note that.
Yeah, dude.
I want to thank you both so much for being here. Liam, as always, delightful to hear you, and delightful to be able to introduce you to something that you did not already know about.
Thanks, buddy. I'm always happy to spend time with you guys, and I really enjoyed it, experiencing something new, and now I got a whole new ocean to sail upon, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, lucky you.
Thanks for introducing me to the wonderful world of Kate Bush. I'm excited.
Absolutely. And of course, it's so terrific to have you, Bradley. And I do want to mention Bradley and Jonathan have a store out in Norwich in England, if you ever get to that side of the pond, or if you are already on that side of the pond. Cosmic Joe's, it is the perfect shop for fans of Docking Bay 77, Star Wars, Disney, all things pop culture. I highly recommend to stop there if you happen to be in that part of the world. And so thank you, Bradley, for taking time out from your day, your day off from the shop and joining us here to talk about Kate.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks so much. And we're lovely to meet you, Liam.
Lovely to meet you, my man.
All right. Of course, as always, we want to thank all of our listeners. Without you, we would not have a podcast. Be sure and join us on social media, rate and review episodes. If you're not a Patreon subscriber, be sure and do that too. There are bonus episodes and all kinds of other benefits you get from sponsoring us on Patreon. Recent episodes there include Yesterday, Spirited Away, and another one I hosted, Top 7 DVD and Blu-ray bonus features, which was a fun episode to record. Coming up in April, we are beginning a new series, Disney Through the Decades. Part 1 is going to include Snow White, Fantasia, Sleeping Beauty, Jungle Book, and then the voters pick The Rescuers. We had you all polled for what you wanted to hear from the 70s, and you chose Rescuers. So we'll be doing those starting in April. We have some other fun things coming up as well. And of course, as always, listen to more music. And our mantra here on the podcast, physical media is always better than streaming. Thanks, everybody.
Hello, lady.
The Docking Bay 77 podcast is produced and edited by Dayton Johnson. Recorded with Rode Pod mics, the Zoom PodTrack P4, and edited on Audacity. Opening music provided by Eric Jason Brock. You can find him on YouTube and Bandcamp. Thank you for listening.